Do we really understand addiction? This is the question we're going to answer on today's show. With us today in studio, we have Jake DeJong and Carling North from Agape Recovery. This is a brand new organization they helped start in our community that launches in January of 2026, aimed at helping those struggling with addiction, starting with alcohol and drugs, but venturing out to more things in the future, and also their families to walk alongside them and support them in this journey of recovery. So we dive deep into the foundation of what actually is the problem at hand here, and the spiritual roots of that problem, and what does that recovery journey look like. So join us today as we walk through that. Quickly, before we get into it, however, I need to bring your attention, if you're watching this, to our brand new studio here at Reformed Book Services. So we're really thankful for Reformed Book Services for giving us a home in their basement where we could set up a permanent studio space and engage in the proper setup for taking our podcast to the next level. So we're quite excited about that. We also want to give Burt Viss Flooring a shout out for providing the flooring. Also Wolf Creek Contracting for all the work that they have put in to make this studio a reality. A special shout out to the Tamiga family, many members of which helped get this thing off the ground. Most especially our beloved producer Mariah for all of her hard work and effort that she put into this. And then finally, giving RP much credit for all the support that they have given to us over the years, for the backing, for the wisdom, particularly of Mark and John, especially, as well as the board for all their feedback over the years. And all of that has helped to improve the show and bring us to where we are today. So from myself, from Tyler, from the whole team, very thankful for the support for all these various parties, and as well with you, the listeners. And with that all in mind, we'll jump into today's episode. The world's changing fast, but what questions should we really be asking? You're listening to Real Talk, a podcast presented by Reformed Perspective, where we take God's Word and apply it to the nitty-gritty of life. Buckle up for real questions, real answers, and real direction. This is Real Talk. Welcome back, everybody, to the Real Talk podcast. I'm excited to be back. As you can see, for anyone watching on YouTube, we are in the new studio, which is pretty exciting, and we got a couple of stellar guests here today. So one returning to the show, of course. So Jake, welcome back to Real Talk. Good to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep. And Carling, a new guest to the show. Very excited to have you on as well, Carling.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about Agape Recovery. So this is a project, an organization that's near and dear to both of you. And it's one that's just been getting off the ground over the past year or so. And but it's also been a long time coming, I think, in some ways as well. So maybe starting with Jake and then moving over to Carling there. Can you guys just give a bit of an introduction about who you are, how you got connected with this project, and then we can kind of talk about where things have gone from there.
Sure. My name is Jake DeJong. I am married for 17 years, I think. I should probably confirm that with my wife. Yeah. To Jessica, and we have 5 beautiful kids. We're living in York, Ontario, so close to Caledonia. And we've been in the Glanbrook congregation for our whole married life, so we enjoy it there. It's actually kind of where I met Carling when we moved into our first house. We actually shared front porches, so we moved in, and then that's cool. And then we kind of looked at each other and we're like, "Oh, do you go to Trinity?" And yeah, we do. And the thing that I haven't really gotten over is the fact that they moved first. So I'm really struggling with that still. We haven't really resolved that.
There's an abandonment issue there.
I know, we're working on it.
They moved in, we moved out.
Yeah, they're like, see ya. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a business owner for the past 7 years. I've owned Power Group Resources. Also very active kind of in the community, in the school community, in the church community as well too. I've been blessed to serve in many capacities as elder as well too. So just been kind of exposed to the hurt that's out there kind of with relation to Agape Recovery and the realness of it. And very thankful to kind of start down this path. So
right on. Carling?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. That was a good introduction. My name is Carling North. I am also married for 19 years. I have 4 teenagers. We run a business, a family business. And I also have been working in mental health and addictions for the last 20 years or so. And I really have a heart along the same lines as Jake, just seeing a need that hasn't really been filled and navigating a process that was just really challenging for so many people during a really vulnerable time. And that's a little bit where our conversation had started, just both recognizing a need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what exactly is Agape Recovery then? How did you guys come together, and what is this organization doing?
Well, we could start how the phone call started. In some
Sure.
way, it started, I think it was April of 2024. You had reached out and you had said, I've really been thinking about this space with regards to addictions and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of something that there is a need out there in the faith-based community for it. And there's been many experiences through families or through people that we've kind of walked alongside of in church and things like that as well too. And just recognizing the need for help in that space inside of our communities specific to addictions and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
The resources are pretty light out there as it relates to, the support that's out there kind of on a public level. And then knowing kind of the stats that, are prevalent in the churches as well too. There's just a lot of need kind of out there. And then you had reached out and you said, hey, from a healthcare perspective, this is something that I have a passion for and want to serve in. And then kind of from a structure point of view, from a business point of view, then we kind of made a good team that way and then just kind of committed to developing a board. So it'd be good to maybe introduce those that are on the board as well too.
Sure.
So then we were able to call Bruce DeBoer and Brad Shooten, and then it started with the four of us. And in a good Dutch way, we kind of thought we would probably have it all built the next day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then
Sounds like those guys.
yeah, exactly. So in one sense, we were a bit humbled by that part of the journey as well too. We were able to partner with the Acacia Group, where they're helping us set things up for the long haul. And when I mean the long haul, like when we focus on a new organization and how to set it up, you have to guess. You have to try and figure out what your sandbox is and how scalable it will be in 2 years, 5 years, so on and so forth. So then we were able to kind of really be grounded by the legal aspect of it and the start of it. And then Reverend Al Bazian joined us on the board as well too. So he's excellent kind of in the board, and he's a pastoral advisor. He also has a story related to addictions, as was on Real Talk before as well.
Yep.
And then Mim Sinky joined as well. She's the administrator and kind of takes care of all the details. Us guys kind of forget from time to time.
That does happen, yeah.
As well. So yeah, we kind of started off in that way with that phone call, recognizing the need, seeing that there wasn't many resources out there, and then we just wanted to make an intentional effort specific around addictions and mental health, and kind of have to ground ourselves. So we've started kind of April 2024, and we're at the point where we're ready to go January 1st, 2026, and
Exciting.
it is very exciting,
Yeah.
and it's somewhat surreal. And then as we go month over month, we start looking at kind of all the things that we did, and we're like, wow, that was a lot. Hey, we kind of have gone through that process of, okay, it's already another meeting. And when you start something up, you get a lot of excitement generated, and then you also learn a lot, have a lot of conversations, and experience the grace of God really as you realize that we are just so tiny as it relates to this big problem, and we recognize that our God is so big compared to how little we are. So
Totally.
yeah.
Are you guys trying to tackle specific addictions, or is it more broad? Where does the mental health aspect come in? Can you just speak to some of that maybe, Carly?
Mm-hmm. So we're starting out with substance use, so drugs and alcohol. And like Jake said, we're figuring out where our sandbox is first. We would love to be able to address things like pornography or eating disorders, betting and gambling. That's been on the rise.
Yeah, you've seen that, eh?
Yeah. And being able to equip ourselves to be able to service the needs that are coming our way is what we hope to do.
Yeah, and I think as specifically with Agape, it's we want to do the crawl before you walk before you run thing. So of course, when you think about the problem, it's so big. that you want to tackle everything. So for us, what we realize is phase one is outpatient care. It's counseling, it's addictions counseling, and workshops, and also walking alongside of individuals, but families as well too, right? Because families are somewhat confused by a lot of it as well too, and we wanted to show that support. So phase two of it is more the rehab center. So that's going to be something pretty substantial and significant as it relates to inpatient care. So that would be kind of like going somewhere for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it kind of takes. And then kind of the third phase, which is a bit farther reaching, would be specifically around mental health. Okay, right? So we kind of wanted to take a very sensible and a logical approach, because if you go out and shoot your energy everywhere, then you're not going to conquer things kind of in a sequential and logical way. So that's kind of where we decided to start. And then with phase one, specific around drugs and alcohol, in the next few hires, like for counselors, then we might find people that are more specific to pornography, more specific to gambling and stuff like that. But we're going to start kind of from that sandbox, knowing that there's a lot of work to be done specifically in the drugs and alcohol space too.
Oh, that's cool. That's nice to see where the plan is and where things are going. Back, I guess, maybe to the problem and speaking practically, right? So if there's a family out there, they have a loved one, they're going through addiction of, pick your type of addiction. Let's say it's addiction to alcohol, right? And they want to help this person. They've tried to help as much as they can, but they feel like they're at the end of their wits. They need some more professional help, right? What are the resources out there right now? And then in specific, maybe you can speak to some of the groups that are out there too. Like, how are you guys different from like a Life Renewal or like a Celebrate Recovery? Or I'm sure you get some of these questions quite often, but maybe just outline some of those differences, and then practically what would it look like for a family to get help as well?
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction. Celebrate Recovery and Life Renewal would be for the person struggling with addiction. And the family, a lot of families have done things like Al-Anon, those types of support programs. Okay. But I think in the experience, a lot of families have just felt like they've been left hanging, and they're navigating by reading books or reaching out to people. And there hasn't really been a lot of support. Specifically in our circles. Perhaps reaching out to Christian Counseling Center or Insight Biblical Counseling to learn, how am I relating to other people? Is that contributing to some of the addictions or the dynamics around addiction? But those seem to be the resources that are on hand right now.
Okay. And are those resources local at all? Like you mentioned, that one organization that people reach out to? Or is that like some of the new aspect that Agape would bring to the table there?
So Agape hopes to bring the community engagement, but also the family dynamics. So a family will be able to sit down with a spiritual advisor or an addiction counselor as a group and be able to talk about some of the struggles that they're facing and also ways to navigate the difficulty.
Yeah, like addictions and mental health is a very invisible thing. Yep. Right. And I think when you see someone that is struggling with a broken arm, you can physically see it and you can kind of relate to it. But there's a lot of support that's needed for the individual to kind of grapple with the sin in their life, and also kind of the disconnection with God as a result of that. So that individual care. But as Carling kind of mentioned, there are other non-faith-based resources that are out there. But it's much different than what we hope to offer, which is more of a holistic, approach to walking with families and individuals as well. So
I think a lot of it is looking at addiction as a symptom too. We think of it as we're just going to treat addiction, but we're treating something much, much bigger.
Yeah. Okay. So as you guys have been growing this organization, organizing, talking to folks, I'm sure you've been around, you've been raising money for this, no doubt as well. You heard about the problem from various people. That's kind of what spurred it on originally. What kind of feedback have you got along the way? Are people, I would assume if it's gaining momentum, which it seems like it is, people are understanding what you guys are going after. They're understanding the need, the problem. So are you seeing similar themes as you kind of move around in our circles here in Southern Ontario and even more broadly if you talk to people outside of that as well?
Yeah, I'd say the positive or the feedback has been very positive. You don't really have to look far in families to see a family that has been afflicted by addictions, and then eventually mental health, which is where we hope to go. So I would say that there's been a lot of positive feedback. People who have said, finally, like a resource kind of inside of our community.
Yep.
There's people that have been trying to reach out to resources, and in the height of a crisis, when you reach out to resources you're on a waiting list for 6 months, or put a pin in that because you're next in line, so to speak. Definitely there is a need, and definitely as we look at kind of the statistics as well too. Even we launched January 1st, but we've already had multiple families reach out, individuals reach out in anticipation of January 1st as well too. Just recognizing the need inside of the community. I don't know, like statistically, when we started, it was like 1 in 4 are afflicted with addictions of some kind.
Really?
In the church circles? Yeah, in the church circles, right? So to have that resource that is, centered around our disconnect, our sin, and our restoration as well too, and is pretty neat. So that's 25% reported. That probably means that there are more. And then there's also higher statistics in other addictions as well that kind of support the need for it. So yeah, you get people that want to make sure that the resources that we're using are being done stewardly. So hey, there's other organizations like CCC, Biblical Insights, Counseling, Insight Biblical Counseling. I can't remember. Yeah, is that the right way of saying it? And other organizations, Family Outreach Ontario, Life Renewal, which we've established connections with, and they themselves are very excited about this as well too. So it's not a competition thing. It's not a space. It's a space that we're actually going to probably receive referrals from them, and in a specific way towards addictions as well too. So from our donors, from our partners, kind of from the general feedback, from the fact that things have already started moving and in motion, we would say that we've been pretty blessed and humbled by that as well. In some sense, we don't know, but just based on what we're feeling, we feel like it's a very scalable thing. You kind of mentioned we're starting in Ontario. We've done some tours out. Bruce actually went out to Alberta. Yep. And they themselves out there were like, "Oh, this is great. This could be something that we should have out here." We did say, well, "How about we figure it out first, and then we'll let you know, and that way we don't work against each other a little bit too." So, been blessed in a way that we've had some financial support out that way as well too, in support of what we're doing here in Ontario, and obviously, by the grace of God, if it kind of continues, we would love to see this all over the place. It's not specific to Southern Ontario. That's just kind of where we live. That way. So.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I mean, on the one hand, I guess it's great that you're getting traction and people see the need, but also the need is there, and it's a big problem too, right? Yeah. So that's lots to tackle that way.
We've also got some good feedback about helping office bearers as well too. They walk.
Well, that would be a big one.
They walk alongside of their sheep, and it's I can say that from experience. It's such a privilege to do so, and just to help office bearers know that there's a resource out there. We have a lot of people that have reached out, and deacons that want to support their sheep as well too. So it could be a third arm in the future, but they'll crawl before you walk before you run. Like try to conquer things in steps. But we've been blessed with a great board. Like we've been like great people, great vision. So thankful for that too. So as phase 1 carries out on January 1st, we're already kind of talking about phase 2 and talking to people about that with great feedback as well too. So
exciting.
It is exciting. It's very exciting. So
nice. Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, and we'll dive into the problem itself, because you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Carling, but just to get to the root of it, we'll kind of work through the problem and the solution, and then hit the process as well. So when we're talking about addiction specifically, right, are we only able to treat addiction? Is there something deeper there? What is the core problem when we're looking at treating addiction?
Yeah, I love this question, because it challenges how we're thinking about addiction. And we think of addiction as the problem, essentially, right? Like you're a recovery group, you're going to be treating addiction. Yeah. But the way that we look at it, it's actually the solution. It's not an ideal solution, but it's the solution that people are seeking to either relieve their distress or seek refuge or maybe find some fulfillment or joy. We're looking to feel better. And that's often why we go to substances, right? We go for a reason. And we don't do things independent of their outcome. So when we look at that, there's an underlying reason why we're picking up drugs, why we're picking up alcohol, or looking at pornography, or we're scrolling on our phone, whatever that is. But if we look at it from that vantage point, then we can see how it is a worship disorder, and how ultimately we're putting ourselves and how we're feeling above our God, our holy God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something we've talked a lot about is perfection's coming, and we can't wait for that. But in the meantime, sin has broken a lot of things, right? It's broken a lot of things in our lives, and put very real temptations in our lives, and as a result, people resort to addictions to kind of cope through that sin and through the pain and the struggle of that as well too, right? So in the meantime, as we wait for that perfection, the Agape name is just centered around walking alongside of and that self-sacrificial love that Christ has given us. Also gives us the opportunity in this way to walk alongside of individuals and alongside of families as well too, and just helping them in that restoration process.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, for sure. Like, maybe if I just jump in and let you get back to it there, Carling. If I look at a program like the 12-step program, right? So addiction, they're treating addiction to, the goal is to become sober, right? And they give it the chips, and it's, 1 year sober, 2 years sober, 10 years sober, whatever, right? When you guys are looking at this, or more specifically, I suppose, how does Scripture look at an issue like sobriety? Obviously, it's good to be sober-minded and whatnot too, but is that the goal when you're looking at an issue of addiction like this?
Yeah, I guess I would challenge that a little bit. And sobriety actually becomes the byproduct, and it's not the goal, right? The goal is the process that we go through. We want to have a right relationship with God. Yeah. And part of that is becoming more and more Christ-like. And through the addiction experience, it brings us closer and closer to God. But that is the goal of navigating addiction.
Yeah, the goal is restoration with our God, right? With Christ. And so you're right. If you think in literal terms, you think sobriety would be the goal, and then we've solved it.
Yeah.
But as we kind of alluded to earlier, it's not that simplistic, right?
Well, and when you explain it like that too, like I don't suffer from a particular addiction myself, but I see that, and I think, well, process of sanctification, like totally, we all need to work on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, do I have a worship disorder? Am I putting other things in my life in front of God? And like, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely lots of things that get in there all the time. So that definitely, if you look at it that way, I can see how that can give empathy to those who don't struggle with it, to those who do, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a helpful lens on it for sure. Did you have some other, I know we had talked about in this outline a little bit too, right? About these different metaphors you have in explaining some of this. And you've talked about the river metaphor a few times, right? About the process, right? Can you explain a little bit to myself and the listeners, what is this river metaphor when talking about kind of healing in this process of sanctification from addiction specifically?
Yeah. I think often when we're struggling with addiction, urges and cravings and desires, they come up, and they can be really difficult to navigate. And you think like, okay, I took drugs and alcohol out of my life. I did the right thing. I did the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, but it's harder. It's still really difficult. And so we think that that temptation, because temptation is still there, that I'm not doing a good job, or this isn't going the way that it's supposed to go. But if you compare it to a river, when you're going against the current, it's hard. And that's what happens when we go into recovery, is that we take this thing that we've been using to cope with life, whether that's drugs or alcohol or pornography, whatever it is, we've taken that out and we're going against the current, and it's hard. And the time that it becomes easy is when I stop trying and I just go with the current. So we can find a lot of encouragement when we're dealing with the urges and the cravings and the temptation and that desire just to give in, that we're on the right path because it's hard. And a lot of times we think like, I decided to take drugs and alcohol out of my life, and we have this idea that I've made the decision to do the right thing, and we're just going to like burst out the gates in all our in all our sober glory, and everything will be everything will be right and it will be good. But God is not going to teleport us, right, to the place where everything is going to be better. He's gonna walk us through like a desert and up
it's gonna expose you, right?
Yeah, and it's gonna be hard. But the beauty of that is that he's gonna be right there with us, and he's gonna walk us through. And that's why, sobriety ends up becoming something that when we move closer and closer to God, that it's a byproduct, but it's not our end goal. Our end goal is to be rightly in a relationship with God.
Yep. Yeah, and that way we're all on the journey together, right?
Totally.
It's just, that's a really helpful lens. I hadn't really thought about it like that before, but that's great. Do you think maybe this gets into like future where this could go? But like my brain right away goes to like, social media. Like so many of us are addicted to social media. Yeah. Do you see, is that something you guys have talked about at all, or like with people?
Yeah.
Along the way?
For sure. I think there's, I mean, no matter how you look at it, like there's people are addicted to a lot of things, whether it be food, whether it be work, or whether it be anger. And again, it kind of speaks to the disorder in our life a little bit that way. But yeah, certainly what we've heard a lot of is the scrolling. For sure, there's an addiction to social media, but also gambling and betting is pretty big amongst the young people amongst as well youth. Too. Yeah. You can pretty well bet on anything. And again, there too, these are all ways to kind of numb the reality and kind of carry on in sin. And each generation has different focuses as well too. Like pornography has had a focus for the past 10 years, and there's you look at the smartphone and you see the scrolling. I mean, that's a huge one 10 years later, things like that. And let's not forget that drugs and alcohol in some sense has been kind of 20 years ago, the drinking and stuff, but that's still prevalent amongst all of our faith-based community as well too, right? And so no matter where you look, there's multiple substances, and as you look down the future, really you can classify it all as a disorder of worship of some kind in your life, right? We talked about that kind of in the board level. We were designed to worship our God in the garden, right? Like that's how we were designed, and unfortunately we fell away, and then we worship other things, right? And so when you think about how we were originally designed, kind of makes sense that we kind of fall into idolatry and things like that as well too. And as we look forward to that future day of perfection, in the meantime we have to walk alongside of each other to orient ourselves in the way of Christ and God, right? So
I think it's interesting that you put the timelines on it, and you ask about scrolling and social media, because we don't tend to pay attention to that as much, because it's not causing so many problems in our life, right? And if you think about those timelines, for alcohol, it usually takes about 10 years for us to think, this might be a problem, to when we start looking for help.
Really?
And if you compare it with smoking, severe consequences don't start showing up for 40 or 50 years. So you don't start making changes for that long. And so when you think about it like that, it's really like addiction is actually an invitation. It's an invitation to explore, how am I using my life? Am I using it to honor and glorify God? Because like you're saying, God put eternity in our heart. We have this desire, and it is not going to be fulfilled with these earthly lesser pleasures. We were made for something more. And I think that's a lot of where our struggles come. It's like, it's worship gone awry, right? We are placing lesser pleasures in the place of where God needs to be in our life.
Yeah, and sometimes like just thinking practically as an elder too, right? You ask the kids about the sports highlights and all of that type of stuff, and if you look at your phone, like, and if there's an average of 3 to 4 hours spent on a phone a day, right? And then it kind of takes the place of commitment to Bible reading and to our God. So then it's a misprioritization, right? Lack of priorities that way as well too. And I bet you if you were to ask a lot of young people, they would be up to 3 to 4 hours a day
probably
scrolling on their phone for definitely. Sure, right? It's just the way that it is. Yeah. So.
Well, we even saw that like from an RP perspective, because RP did the whole screen fast, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's in the latest issue as well. But all the feedback we got, it was like really eye-opening to see that.
For sure.
Like so many people are like, "Oh, thank you for like encouraging us to do this, because I didn't know I had a problem with this."
Exactly.
It's just a little couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, right? It's it's a big issue that way.
And I think a lot of our struggles and difficulties kind of end up like that we don't see. It's this slow building.
Yeah.
And I like to compare it to a rainbow and not like a cartoon rainbow where it's really distinct lines. Yeah. Yeah. No, but like
we always had it.
Yeah, we never lost it.
Yeah, that's right.
A real rainbow where like the red fades into orange and orange fades into yellow. Yeah. You don't really understand, like, I'm in the middle of this until you're right in the middle of it. And you're like, I don't know which line crossed over. I don't know how I got here or how many was too many. But it has that slow progression to it that you just find yourself in the middle of.
Yep.
And I think that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah. It's the old slippery slope.
Yeah.
Switching gears a touch maybe, but I kind of just want to get to drugs and alcohol specifically because that's where you guys are starting with, right? So we just talked about a couple like social media and pornography as more recent examples of addiction, levels of addiction in our community, in our church circles. I, of course, looking back to past episode we did with Pastor Al, you mentioned off the top, right? I remember we did that. That's probably about 5 years ago now, give or take. And that definitely got a big pop, a big reaction from our Reform community. Like, because that really resonated with a lot of people that they found that, yeah, hey, maybe I was drinking too much, or like, oh yeah, so-and-so I know in my family, like I'm trying to help them with their struggles. And it seemed like it was a pretty real and alive issue at the time. Are you guys still seeing those two in particular as live issues? Like alcohol, I can see how that would definitely still be a thing. Drugs, specifically more harder drugs. Personally, I don't see that a ton in my life. And that probably is a similar experience, I think, for more people because it hides itself so much. So how prevalent are those two issues in our community, maybe specifically on the drug side of things as well?
Yeah. Well, I think it's tricky. You hit on something really important that I don't see it around me. I feel like I'm the only one. So then we don't talk about it. We isolate. But it is in our communities. A lot of people will come and they will talk about it. I'm like, oh, I wish you would know that, there's 2 or 3 or 4 other people sitting right beside you in the pew that are struggling the same way that you are. But we feel a lot of shame and we're not talking about it because we feel like we're the only one. And maybe I'm recognizing like I am doing this, but I don't really want to stop. I don't. Maybe I'm recognizing I do want to stop sometimes, but sometimes not. And if I do want to stop, I don't know what to do about it. Right. So I'm not going to talk about it. And so all of these things are adding to people just isolating themselves and not. But that is our biblical way, right? We're called to walk alongside one another, but to also put things out into the light. So to talk about things and to not hide them, because it takes a lot of the shame and the struggle out of it when we can do this with other people.
I find it kind of interesting. I was in a evening, Why Are You Canadian Reform evening in Dunnville. There was it's a pretty full church. There was 3 speakers, did a great job, and they were just asking. It was actually started by the young people, and they just want to ask ministers questions about like why are we Canadian Reform, nice. And so they did a great job. But what I found kind of interesting is coming out of question period was actually the focus on addictions around specifically marijuana and also drinking as well, alcohol. And there's probably like 5 or 6 questions specific to how it's viewed. And so certainly if it lives kind of in a question period as well too, in addition to all the people that have been reaching out, in addition to the invisibility of it all, we see it as a very prevalent issue inside of our circles. I don't think you have to look far that people are struggling with substance abuse, right? And specifically in those 2 areas. So yeah, I just found that kind of interesting to hear the young people talk about it and ask questions around drugs and there too, right? Like marijuana has been legalized, so why do you take marijuana? Is it a gateway to other drugs? Things like that as well too. But it certainly lives inside of our community around those two areas.
Mm-hmm. We definitely have different expectations around alcohol and drugs. Like alcohol is celebrated and expected. Yep. Like, hey, you want to go for drinks? It's assumed that you're going to go out for drinks. And, it becomes problematic when all of a sudden you can't control yourself. And it becomes almost like a personal failure as opposed to like you're taking in an addictive substance. And then we blame the person for becoming addicted to something that's addictive.
Right.
So there is that distinction, I think, that is difficult for people, especially if they are struggling with drug addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tough one, just even on both sides of that fence, right? Like, if you're the person inviting the other person out for drinks, I mean, if you know them, you probably shouldn't do that if they're an alcoholic. But if you don't know them, it's just, like you say, it's a very casual, easy way to get to know someone, to talk to someone, right? So finding other ways around doing that, or just keeping it more general. Yeah. Do you have any, like, tips on how to, like, help people in that kind of context? Because I see it more and more, like, even just amongst my peers and stuff too. Like, I know just a few different people in my life, they just cut it out. I don't even like it was like a crippling issue, but they're like, this is, like you say, it's on a 10-year timeline. They might be in like year 4 and they're like, I ain't doing this. Like, this is going to go poorly. Right?
Yeah. Well, I know, and you ask yourself, like, why am I trying to control this substance that's controlling my life?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question that we should ask ourselves is, how is this showing up in my life? And is it okay? Is it honoring God? Because we tend to think, oh, well, I only drink on the weekends, or I only use drugs on the weekends. I'm still going to my job. I'm still doing all the things that I'm supposed to. But I think that's a really, really important question.
Yeah.
Certainly seeing it, like, again, as an elder as well too, amongst the youth, drinking is quite prevalent, just in home visits as well too, to talk that through and what's the motivation for that. It's typically starts social, right? And then it kind of, you go through pain in life, and then you just kind of keep escalating a little bit that way as well too. So certainly kind of from an elder point of view, I've definitely seen those spaces again. So
I think that's the dangerous part, right? Because we tell kids, like, don't use drugs and alcohol. You're going to end up like not without a job or homeless under a bridge. And then kids try drugs and alcohol and they're like, I'm not homeless and under a bridge. I'm fine. Yeah. But again, it's that progressive aspect.
And it's not to pick on the youth, because it's a problem that exists. It's not forgiving to any age, really, as well. It's just, I think the youth are a little bit more open about these things, because as you kind of get older and in your life, it's almost like there's more shame that kind of builds with it as well too, and it becomes a little bit harder to deal with when you have kind of families and things like that as well too. And that's why it can be a bit surprising, right?
Yep. Well, you talked about the need for honesty a bit there earlier, Carling, too, right? Obviously, that's important. You got to admit you have a problem to kind of start making any headway on it as well. But if someone's listening to this and, they're starting to feel like, hey, maybe I do have a problem, is Agape, once it gets going, is that the place to start, like to reach out as one of the people affected? Or is it more like, hey, family members come, like go to Agape for support type of thing? Or is it both?
Yeah, I would say both. Reach out, and part of the process, the intake and assessment, is just looking at what are your needs, what are your strengths, and then being able to direct people to where they want to go. But that honesty piece that you're talking about is really important. We often, if you're supporting somebody else, or even if you're going through it, we tend to focus on maybe the physical withdrawals or the difficulty of taking the substance out, the relationship difficulties. We focus on all of those things, but there's actually a step before it that nobody's paying attention to. And it's, we have to get honest with ourselves about what this is and getting honest with other people. And so we're focusing on all of these other aspects, like getting the drugs and alcohol out, when really we need to start becoming just honest with God and with our...
Yeah, and that's no fault of the situation, really, right? That's kind of our natural reaction, is to just solve problems. Let's just fix it. And I think that it's much more than that, right? And I think at the height of the crisis, the family will reach out, but even to that point, there's relief once they're kind of working through it and working on it. But then for families as well too, like how do we support it? And you don't have to look far, and people relapse a number of times, and we recognize that, right? Like, that's sin in this world, and it might take time, and it's never 100% success rate, and what is success, right? Like, we talk about that as well too. So the support is for both. Like, if there's a family that wants to talk it through, and we're happy to support them in that, and if there's an individual that says, no, like, listening to this, I am really struggling with this disorder in my life, and we would ask them to reach out as well too. So we were very intentional about both those categories being supported. So For instance, we have an equal focus. Reverend Bazan is going to be working with families and kind of pastoring them through this process as well too. It's confusing, and there's many people, and there's many people affected by addictions as well too, and just to have it in the right setting and in the right framework allows you to know how to best support as well too. So we plan to run workshops for individuals, but then also for families as well too, to really feel supported in that process. Again, just think about it as something that's very invisible.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing, and then you need help to kind of work your way through that and get to that point. Otherwise, you're at the behest of the behavior, so to speak, right? And that can be so tiring. That can be so exhausting for families as well, and for individuals as well too. You think the families are having a hard time, and so is the individual that's kind of working through it as well too. So
100%. Nice. Okay. Well, we've really defined the problem now, right? It's deeper than just an addictions issue, right? And we've talked a little bit about the solution as well. What does that look like? And maybe to dive a bit deeper and move into this next section here, we should talk about the process, right? So I'll throw another metaphor at you, which you're familiar with. So the pool metaphor, right? Being in a pool. What does this metaphor exactly entail? And what does this process look like once someone starts to be honest with themselves, admit they have a problem, start to look to change? Where are we going from there?
Yeah. I think that's good, especially after following what you were saying, because the process is really long.
Yeah.
We often think that I get into treatment, I do, your program is 1 month. I do the program and now I'm fixed. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And so being able to see it for what it is, I like to compare it, like you said, to a pool. So you're sitting beside the pool and you're quite comfortable. This is a good description of your life. So nothing's really bothering you. You're going about, you're watching people hang out in the pool. You're not really ready to go into the pool. As life, gets hard, maybe it gets a little bit hot around the pool, you start sweating and you're like, oh, maybe I'll dip my foot in the pool. That's a little bit like what recovery is like. Maybe I'm going to call Agape and I'll just explore this. And then you're like, whew, no, this is a little bit too much. I'm going to go back on my chair, and you sit back on your chair. And then things start getting hard again. So then you think, okay, I'm just going to go to my waist. And so you get into the pool and you go up to your waist, and then you think, no, this is getting hard again, and you get back out. And that's like the recovery process, right? We're going to go in and we're going to go out, and it takes us a long time to get really committed to staying in the pool. So staying in recovery. Maybe we sit outside of the pool and we're like, it's not worth it. It's not worth, the water is cold. There's people splashing. I don't want to do this. And so you stay out for a while. But then maybe you start getting sunburnt and you get back in the pool. And then you have to recognize, what do I need to stay in that pool, right? Do I need goggles? Do I need a floaty? What's going to help me stay in recovery? Maybe I have a relapse. What was I missing that I needed? Or what did I need in that situation that I didn't have? And that's how we can start looking at it. And that's really how we treat recovery. So relapses aren't a failure, but they're just an opportunity to look at, what did I need in this situation that I didn't have? So what do I need to stay in that pool? And for it to be worth it? Because a lot of times it just doesn't feel worth it. But keep dipping your feet in that pool and keep trying. And that's what we're going to do at Agape, is just walking alongside of you and helping you to stay in the process. And that is how we learn. That is part of the sanctification process, is that we're like, it's worth it. It's not worth it. I want it. I don't want it. And navigating those difficulties in a grace-filled way.
It's a journey, right? I think we recognize that, and it affects you at different times in your life as well too. Certain things can bring it on, but you don't have to look too far. Like, I wish Reverend Bazine was here. He could talk about Job better than I can probably do. A little spin on it, but what strikes me, it's actually a sermon that I had listened to from Reverend Vermeulen. Like, talk about everything that could happen to someone. Imagine every 15 minutes someone coming up to you and whispering in your ear, now this has happened, now that has happened. And at the end of it all, Job says, I have heard you, but now I see you, Lord, right? So sometimes that hear to sight can also take pain. It can take suffering. It can take a journey, which we recognize, and that's an amazing story of sanctification and refinement, and every temptation in the world kind of to curse God, and yet through it all he heard, but now he sees God, and we see that kind of in God's word as well too, like being tested and being refined, 1 Peter, and I think that's an opportunity for us to recognize it for what it is, that way as well too. So life is painful and perfection is coming, and that's why we're pretty pumped to kind of walk alongside of the family and walk alongside of the individual in a grace-filled way, like you said, pointing to Christ, who's given us unconditional love that way.
You got to be very patient to do that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's certainly not a linear process.
No.
It's very, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, hopefully 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah, and I think that's hard because I'm a very linear thinker, as you know.
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, I know. Well, you implied it. And so, if you think of the alphabet, you're like A through Z. That's how I like it.
Yeah.
But then it goes to A to M to R to, B, and then you kind of go all over the place. And so that can be tough to work with and to walk alongside with as well too. But again, stepping back, maybe it's not something specifically that you struggle with, but if you think about other things that you struggle with in your life that you kind of, whether it be your work or whether it be anger, whether it be food or whether it be any of those things, you can kind of go out of sequence as well in your own life, right? So you have to have a little bit of an understanding for that. And yes, it does require patience, but I mean, certainly God's given us more patience than what we deserve as well too. So I think we have a good example to look to that way for sure.
We talked a little bit, or you were getting to it, I think, about this with the pool metaphor, how we need to stay in the pool ultimately, right, in that recovery. But when we're in there, what helps keep our eye on the ball, so to speak, right? Like, what is the goal of recovery in that way? Is there, I mean, obviously there's an eternal endpoint to that, but while we're here on this earth, right, what is the goal of that process?
I guess so if you related to what we were talking about earlier, if we're struggling with a worship disorder, we're struggling with rightly assigning God his place in our life. And that's what we need. That's what we need for our way through. So we're seeing we're not loving the Lord our God, and we're not rightly placing him in our lives. That's our problem, but that's also our solution. So that is the thing that is going to get us through, the valleys and the deep, dark places and the difficulties that we're navigating. Like, he is the way through. Colossians 2 talks about, like, do not handle, do not touch, do not taste. And these things, it talks about there's wisdom and that it's very good, right? We're going to use techniques to stay in recovery. We're going to use strategies. We're going to do all of these things. But this is also a spiritual battle for us. And we have something that is more powerful than anything else. We have the Holy Spirit who's going to change our hearts. He's going to change our desires. He's going to change our life. And he's going to do that so that we don't even desire these lesser pleasures anymore. And that is ultimately the way through. It's the problem and it's the solution.
Yep. What does it mean then because if I'm hearing all this correctly, I'm just trying to pull this into one question, so I'll do my best at this, but to live in relationship with God, in a covenant with God versus just coexisting with God. It would seem to me, based on this whole understanding of addiction and the hole that's there in our life, right? It's almost as if we're kind of doing our own thing over here. God's over here. He's part of our life as much as we want him to be, but not all the time. And then we kind of just do our own thing and fill that idol, the God-shaped hole in our heart with an idol of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So what does it actually mean to walk with God in covenant? Maybe specifically in an addictions sense, but even just broadly for all of us with all the idols that we put in that place.
As you're giving me that example, I'm thinking about kids and their sports hero, right? They know all the statistics. They know the life history. They know how fast they can throw the ball or how they can kick. They know all of these things. And we have that with God too, right? We open his word and we know he's merciful and gracious. But like the sports hero, it's information, right? It's not a relationship. And a child has a relationship with his father who will have a conversation with him. He will cry. He will ask questions. You will throw a ball around. Like, that is being in a relationship. It's more than just having information about God and who God is. And if we think about, say, my struggle is pornography. And so when somebody's sitting right beside you, you're not going to look at it because you know they are right there beside you, right? You're going to feel their presence and they're going to be looking at you. If we really believe that God is like right there with us in our struggle, we wouldn't be opening our phones like in our rooms if we think that we think that we're by ourselves in those moments, right? But God is actually there. So engaging him in our battle. So crying out like, God, I want this thing more than I want you right now.
But I know that's wrong.
Yeah. And I know that's wrong. So praying these things out to him and not hiding in isolation as if he's not there.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we think about these things, like you use the word spiritual warfare, like that's what we're in, right? And I think being in covenant, like you had said, with our God requires us to really work at that, you know. And I think sometimes if people are even listening and I know that's just not me, or I just can't do that. That's too bad, right? Because I think we need to work at what it means to be in communion with God and to be in covenant with him. And when I say work, it's by the grace of God. It's not, like even Agape is just this puny little thing compared to the power of the Holy Spirit that way. But true peace comes from him, right? It comes through prayer. It comes through our God who is so powerful, right? So to bring people to that restoration point is almost, again, we realize how little we are in this big problem, but that's the true blessing of kind of serving and kind of walking alongside of people who desire that, but yet feel the shame or the guilt or I would love that, but I just can't see my way to get to that. That's why Agape is there to kind of help them get to that path, right? When you think about so many examples in scripture of walking with people and think about what Christ has done for us. Yeah, I think it kind of leads us to that greater communion with God. The closer you are to God, the less you have a desire to kind of find things that distract you from him and make you outside of covenant with him and outside of communion. So it's that holistic focus, right?
Yeah, 100%. Just to touch on the last little point you made there too, like I think it's really again seeing this as a problem that we all have, right? This idol in our hearts, right? This desire to serve ourselves and not God. I think it's really cool to see what you guys have done with Agape and are going to do more of, in that you can support everyone to kind of help walk alongside others, and then also be there in covenant with each other as, you know, the community of saints, as a body of believers, right? Which kind of actually nicely dovetails with what we heard at Strive as well, with our friends over at Strive. But
great conference, by the way.
Yes, good
excellent.
fun. Check it out next year. Yes.
But maybe if I can just say something to that. So one thing that we've talked a little bit about is mind, body, and soul, right? Yeah. Like I think that's sometimes the more public programs that there are, it's like, get your body right, get your mind, but like there is that soul aspect as well too, right? And I think as we look towards the aspect of phase 1, which is the outpatient care, phase 2, which would be kind of the rehab center, the wellness center, we certainly would incorporate things like nutrition and for the body as well too, and strengthening of the mind. But it's that spiritual aspect, that soul piece, and all three of them have a place inside of the recovery as well too. It's not just you have to eat better or you have to think this way more positively. It's there's a collaboration between all three of those as well too.
I think that's the last part of the program too, is how am I using all of my life, like my time and my body, what I'm putting in my body, my mind, all of it. How am I using that to honor and glorify God, and how am I stewarding that in my life? And so we practically walk through that really slowly. And that's going to look different for me than it is for you, right? Yep. So we're building this recovery plan and really building something that we don't want to escape from, but something that just brings honor and glory to our God.
Yep, for sure. How do you measure growth in that?
Yeah.
Because to me, again, being somewhat of a linear thinker as well, just like, okay, how are we improving here, right? Like, where are we going, right? Like, because it is so back and forth. So
Yeah.
how do you see growth or some type of success? Yeah.
Yeah. I think God's redemptive purposes for our life are not often measured by this concrete binary.
No, there's no scorecard. Sorry, man. And that
works.
Yeah, I know. And that is the thing, right? Like when you do have to manage your expectations as it relates to even starting something like this as well too, because you think, okay, how many people come through, what's the sandbox? Obviously when we say those things, it's not meant to, people are experiments or things like that. It's more or less we'll take the data that we have and make good decisions, identify what's working in the workshops and in the programs and how we're supporting the families. And so we have a very intentional focus on collecting that from the get-go. We realize that any dollar that has also been given to us in support of this mission is to be met with a good stewardship. And so for us, success would be one person. Like if you think about it, right? Like in that sense, right? Restoration with God. And I think, we kind of look at it that way. We did talk about that, and you talk about percentages and what the success rate of a rehab facility would be, and there's always going to be strategies that you kind of work at to kind of improve things, efficiencies and things like that. But I don't think you can totally measure it.
No. And even on a smaller scale in terms of recovery, if I keep messing up, how am I measuring growth, right? Like I keep relapsing and I keep doing this thing that I said I wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like success. Like this doesn't seem like growth. It doesn't feel good. Oftentimes, you're caught up in addiction and you stop for a period of time and then you'll pick it back up and you look at it in this very black and white. Like I'm either success or I'm a failure, right? An all or nothing. Yeah. And then, you relapse and you slip and you think, well, I already messed up anyway. I might as well drink and drug myself into oblivion for the weekend or the next, 2 weeks. And that's what you do. But then when we want to do this in a God-honoring way, we relapse. As soon as we relapse, cry out to God, ask for forgiveness, and make the distance between God and calling out to him, shorten that. And that is a beautiful measure of growth when we are thinking about our covenantal relationship with God.
Sometimes I think we don't think often enough of God's providence. Everything is purpose. Everything. And like at this point in someone's life, they might be, at this point because it's been providentially purposed that way, right? So if someone goes to a rehab and who knows what their conversation to other people have been and what they've shared and their faith and sometimes we think of ourselves so big, but yet we're so small. Like we're so small when it comes to God's purpose and plan. And I think sometimes, when we think of failure, so to speak, if someone has gone through the program once and has to go through the shame of saying I haven't overcome it, that was God's plan. We're at this point because he purposed it to be that way. So let's continue to walk into eternity, and so in some sense, try not to be so hard on yourself, because I'm always amazed, even if it's outside of just in business and in life and conversations, we're being used as instruments in his kingdom. And that's kind of the way we should look at it as well too, right? So
like progressive sanctification, like that's God's design and plan for our life, and not because we couldn't do any better. He chose that for us, and there's a beautiful comfort in that, I think.
Totally. Well, that theme of providence, you must be a master at this podcasting thing, because that's a beautiful segue.
Nice.
Into my next question.
It dovetails. It dovetails nicely.
Yes, there we go. That's it. So on this, if someone has been listening to this podcast and they've got through all this so far, so they have a good understanding of what you guys are doing with Agape and what the problem is, what the solution is, what that process looks like. If they are concerned that they have a problem in their life, how can they know that they're addicted? Versus, we talked about, we all have, again, these idol factories in our hearts, right? But if someone's listening to this, what are some signs that they can know, like especially in their heart, that they're addicted? or they're an addict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a similar question to your last one, I guess. Like, we want this number, right?
Right.
Or this amount of days, or this length of time.
I can't give you a specific answer, Lucas. Sorry. All right.
It's the best
Are there any
no
general
answer.
signs or like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there anything there?
I think if we start asking ourselves, is this bringing honor and glory to God? Because somebody can have one drink and it can bring honor and glory to God, and another person cannot have a drink,
Yeah, it's the
and
why.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
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 What's your motivator, right?
Yeah.
You know, and even in that one evening that from the Why Are We Canadian Reform evening, you know, what's the motivator? Someone was asking specifically about addictions. Is it gladdening the heart, or is it much more than that, right? And I think there is no necessarily box that we can kind of place someone in, but I think you just have to ask yourself, what is the motivator for that? And if you feel it detracting from your covenant with God and your communion with God, then it becomes an idol and a disorder of worship that way as well too, right?
Yep.
So yeah, it's different for everyone. People's recoveries are different as well too. And if you feel that it takes away from your relationship with God, then I think that's probably the litmus test as well, right?
Do you recommend people take a break from, if you're doing hard drugs, you should definitely take a break, but just something like alcohol or like we talked about earlier, social media, whatever, is it good to kind of just pull back a bit and kind of, is that a good way to help yourself look at that at least? And
Sure. Yeah.
get a sense of your motivations that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often that will, and I think we have to be careful too. Sometimes it's necessary to contact a doctor, right? Because some of the withdrawal symptoms can be fatal, and we don't necessarily know where we fall on that spectrum, because it doesn't line up with, I use this much, so my withdrawal symptoms are going to be this much.
Yeah.
It's very unpredictable. But I would say, open the Bible, get to know who God is and what he loves and what is his design for your life, and pray for clarity that more and more you can desire to live his way.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Here we are now. People have a problem. There's a need in the quote unquote marketplace for this. You guys have set up this organization. That's wonderful. Does it cost any money for people? How does that work? Is it?
Yeah, this is a question that we've been working through, right? Because when you start something, you kind of have to figure out what makes sense. Mm-hmm. So certainly to get things started, we're 100% charitable, and we've been blessed to have good partners that are helping us in that journey. So when you start a charity, you have to be careful that you don't go non-for-profit, and you got to make sure that it's there's a purity to the service that way. Mm-hmm. But we will eventually get to the point of charging for the service as well too, because when someone struggles with it, they also need to put a commitment towards it as well too. And if they can't make that commitment, then their family can certainly help out, right? Because they're part of the journey. And if that family can't do it, the deacons and the community. And so there's actually a huge opportunity. So when it comes to the financial model of it, we're kind of excited about kind of that biblical model as well too, that they're able to kind of participate in that way. And it also, when you do it that way, then there's a scalability to the program. Certainly if you have donors funding all of this, I think our budget is around $800,000 for the first year, and we're looking for partners to kind of help us in that as well too. When it becomes a little bit more of a commitment from the individual and the family and the community, it kind of entrenches all of us around the problem as well too. So then that model will kind of come out as we understand a little bit more, probably 6 months in or so. And that's 100% legitimate with charities that we've been kind of getting to know charitable law and all the ins and outs and the things you can and cannot do. And it's a bit of a process of details and a bit like a lot meticulous and stuff, but I enjoy that stuff. So so
this sucks.
Dotting I's, crossing T's.
Wow.
So it will come, and we think that that's the biblical way to do it. But for now, we're just kind of looking at what the sandbox is and the need that's going to come out there. So the need, like just to touch on that, is for NAPARC churches and those who subscribe to the three forms of unity. So there's no I call it discrimination amongst other federations or anything like that. But there comes a point where you have to kind of work with your community in that way as well too. So we've been blessed to have received support from other churches that have reached out in support of what we're doing as well too. Limited resources in their church federation, specifically inside of NAPARC that way as well too. So
nice. That's awesome. So again, geared towards drugs and alcohol.
Correct.
If someone's struggling with pornography, that's something you guys would like to help them with down the road, but not at this time.
We have 2 full-time staff starting January 1st, which we're pretty pumped about. We have Carling, and then we have a managing director, which will help the work of the board as well, because we've been doing a lot of tedious work for 18 months, and there comes a point where it has to be picked up that way. But yeah, as we move into more hires, I think our budget suggests a couple more counselors by the end of 2026. So we will likely be kind of centering around different addictions in those hires as well too. So cool. As we kind of grow, then the specialties will grow as well too. So in all honesty, if someone said wanted to reach out, if it's different than drugs and alcohol, I think we would still love to hear from them. And if we can't support them, we will find a way to support them. As just the agape love that we would have towards anyone that would reach out that way as well too. So yeah.
Awesome. If someone comes to sign up for the program, what does that look like at all? Is there any vetting process, or are you guys like, hey, how serious is this? Like, what does that look like exactly?
So the person would have to go through an intake process, and we look at a bunch of different criteria to make sure that you are a good fit. We really want you to be successful in the program. And there are things like, for example, you can't be in active addiction, or you can't be in active withdrawal. Those type of things need to be navigated through medical, before you can move on to more of the therapeutic. So it would look like probably 3 times a week for about 3 hours. You would come and do a group psychoeducational, and then you would have one-on-one sessions with an addiction counselor. And then there would be an aftercare after that month that you could drop in once a week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just maybe a distinction point as well too. So there's Teen Challenge that people are aware of as well too, right? Which is a commitment, right? It's a year of going away, and for us, why we started with the outpatient care is because there's two groups really. One being with people who are struggling to kind of know where they sit, and are they struggling, and are they dealing with addictions, and want to kind of really figure that out and explore that through the program. But it's also like when you go to phase 2, which is the inpatient care, what are you integrating back into, right? So often what happens is people will come back and they will hope, okay, I'm fixed, or I'm healed, like things like that. But it's a lifelong journey. So if you're able to kind of come back to that outpatient care, then there's just that constant loop that is kind of being handled and being managed. And that's why it was really important for us to start with phase 1, to kind of those 2 groups of people that are, struggling with it and they want to kind of understand it. And then people who are going through it and need the support to kind of continue that lifelong journey in this life until we hit eternity.
A lot of people in our community are not able to go away for 30, 60 or 90 days either. And being able to stay in their community, in their family, and be able to access intensive outpatient is something that we've identified as a need in our community.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. If people want to find out more about Agape, best place to go?
Right now, our website, agaperecovery.ca.
Awesome.
There is an email on there that you can reach out to us, and you can schedule a call or send an email. We also have a newsletter on the website that you can sign up for.
Information evenings coming up. So November 27th we'll be in Grimsby.
Nice.
December 4th we'll be in Orangeville, and December 11th we'll be in Sheffield.
Nice.
So we're looking forward to kind of walking through the 10 steps just to get a little bit more. I was like, so what's the process, right, that you would go through, just give a high level. And we're hoping that we have no way of knowing who's going to come to these things. So in some sense, you bring your wife and your mom just to make yourself feel a little bit better, that someone will be there. But we're really hopeful that if there's people struggling with addictions, if there's families that are confused by it, if there's donors who would like to support it, if there's elders that want to learn more about it, there is no specific group that we just want to share kind of what we're doing and kind of grow in that way as well too. So we're hoping that lots of people kind of show up to that. And from what we've experienced so far, just from ministers and office bearers and things like that, that there's been some good response back as well too. So nice. I'm thankful for those resources. So come out to those evenings.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely promote that for sure. Are people able to financially support on the website as well? Is there a donation option there?
There is a donation option. We are going through, so it's interesting. It's moved very nicely and at a pretty good speed. So the website now was kind of meant to be a landing page for partners and donors, but it's kind of moved quickly to people are very interested in the help, right? And so we are redesigning the website to kind of be more client and family focused a little bit, and shifting off of the partnership focus. Not that we don't want partners, but it'll be more of a secondary feel to the new website. So in that sense, they can reach out that way. Cool. And there is a donor section to it as well too. But ultimately, this is God's work. For us, we are appealing to people to kind of help and come forward as well too. As I said earlier, kind of in the talk, you don't have to look far. People know someone who's been afflicted by it. And, just in light of kind of walking alongside of others, we feel like it's a cause that, people are very supportive of and have been affected by differently as well too. So we're pretty thankful for the support that we've received so far.
Awesome. Well, guys, any final thoughts or closing thoughts for the audience that way?
Thank you for having us. And all of this work has been a privilege. I'm excited to see what lies ahead.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And I think just to reiterate, our God is so big. And when we reflect on the love of Christ that he has given to us so unconditionally, I think it's a joy and a privilege to do this work as well too. And while we move forward in faith, we do so in humility, kind of knowing that he will bless it. And it's our hope that there's success, but also, restoration with our God that's achieved along the way. So pretty thankful for that, and thankful for the platform to kind of talk about it.
Oh, thankful for you guys. I learned a lot, and it's very helpful. Again, being a fellow more linear thinker, just to understand the process of addiction more and how we can all see ourselves in it and how we can walk alongside our fellow brothers and sisters in this journey and how you guys are supporting people in that. I just think it's amazing, and God bless in all your efforts.
Thank you.
So till next time, it's been Real Talk.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk. In partnership with Reform Perspective, this show is created and produced by Tyler Vanderwood, Lucas Holtvloer, and Mariah Tamiga. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen or watch the show. If you have any feedback for us or ideas for future guests or topics, please let us know. You can reach us at reformedrealtalk@gmail.com. Be sure to also follow us on social media. You can search Reformed Real Talk on any of the platforms. We should come right up. Also, leave us a review, preferably a 5-star one, on any of the podcast platforms. That would be greatly appreciated. That's all for now, folks. Keep having real talk.